Hello guys, welcome, and today's discussion topic is PE ratio. So today you're going to learn everything related to PE ratio. What is a PE ratio? How to calculate PE ratio? What is PETTM? What is PE forward? And day-to-day questions you are going to face when you start using PE ratio. So let's start. First of all, PE ratio is the most common ratio used to value the stock or to calculate the value of the stock. It is calculated by dividing the stock price or per stock price by earning per share. Now, per stock is your current price of the stock or the current share price of the stock, and earning is the last 4 quarters earning. So what you're going to do, you're going to calculate last 4 quarters earning and add all those 4 quarters earning, and you're going to use that EPS here. Let's take an example. First, let's say we want to calculate the PE ratio for the stock Facebook. So for Facebook, let's say the current stock price, for example, here is $150, and the earning for the last 4 quarters, earning per share for last 4 quarters is $10. Now your PE ratio for Facebook will be 15. Now most of the times you do not need to calculate EPS, earning per share. You will get this number on different websites like Yahoo and Finviz. At the same time, you do not also calculate PE ratio. You will get the actual number or the real time number on these websites as well. Initially, you have to calculate this manually in order to understand what is the effect or how the PE ratio matters. Later, if you just look at the numbers, you can value the stock in just seconds. Okay, now the industry standard for PE ratio is 20 to 25. If for any company the PE ratio is between 20 to 25 or 20 to 25 is considered is a good value stock. Now, as we discussed already, we are using all 4 quarters earning here, EPS for last 4 quarters. So that is what we call trailing 12 months period, right? So if you are using last 4 quarters earning, that will be considered as a PETTM. Most of the time you will see term PE. So this PE is by default PETTM. That's a 12 months period ratio for the past 4 quarters earning. Now, if you want to estimate the further or the upcoming quarters earning, that will be considered as PE forward. So here we are not using the actual earnings of the stock, EPS of the stock. Instead, we are using the estimated earning of further 4 quarters, and that is how we considered PE forward. On most of the sites, as I said, a PE forward ratio is also available. PE is also there, and to calculate your P by E ratio, you will also find EPS on the websites. Now, how does it matter? So let's say the company PE ratio is higher. That means the company stock is expensive and investors are anticipating for the higher growth. Okay, for example, Amazon. So Amazon PE ratio is higher than the industry standard. That means more investors are expecting the stock growth to go higher for the current year as well as for the next year, and more people are buying this stock. At the same time, lower PE means the stock is a value stock or is a cheap stock or trending low in value compared to the higher PE, and more investors are selling this stock. Now, lower PE doesn't mean that stock is always good, because for some of the reason most of the investors are selling the stock, and that is the caution. At the same time, higher PE doesn't always mean that the stock is going to go up in value and it's going to always go up in value, and the PE ratio is going to be higher all the time. So you may want to do your research and analyze your stock, not only PE point of view, but from other aspects of the stock market analysis to understand before you buy any of the holdings. Now, the general questions you may face when you start calculating PE ratio. So here are the questions. First, what can be calculated or what can be estimated using PE ratio. So first thing first, you are going to calculate the value of the stock, and second is you're going to calculate the growth of the stock. So value of the stock is calculated by the simple PE or PETTM ratio, and growth can be calculated as PE forward. Sometimes for any stock, let's say PETTM is, let's say, 40, so maybe at this point you may find this stock a bit on the higher side of the value or the range, but at the same time you may, some of the stocks are stocks PE forward ratio is lower than the TTM ratio, maybe it's 20. So that means for the upcoming year this stock is going to perform well, or the earnings are going to go high for the same stock compared to current year. So every time you look at the PE, and if you want to start buying that stock, you may also want to look at what is the forecast for the upcoming year, or simply what is the PE forward ratio for the same stock. Now, where to check the same PE ratios? As I said, most of the sites, Yahoo, Finviz, or other sites, they offer this ratio as real-time ratio. I personally use these two sites to check my ratios and other equations. Should I calculate it every time? No, because when you start calculating for the first 2, 3, 4, or 10 times, you are going to understand what is the PE ratio and how does it imply to your decisions. Then later, when you just look at the PE ratio and PE forward ratios, you will easily understand the value of the stock. Next, how does it fluctuate? How does the PE ratio change? Now, the PE ratio changes if the price of the stock or the earning of the stock changes. Let's say the price of the stock goes high and earning stays the same, because earning for last quarters you cannot change, so earning stays the same. That means the PE ratio is going to go up, right? So that's how the PE ratio goes up. At the same time, if the price of the stock goes down, and of course the EPS is going to be the same, so the PE ratio itself will go down. Most of the market movements, majority of the market movements, let's say earnings, have the higher impact, or any recession, depression, correction, or day-to-day moments in the stock itself increases or decreases the PE ratio value. Now, if the earning increases, for the PETTM earning won't increase, but for the PE forward ratio, if the earning increases, the PE ratio will come down. And that's why most of the time we will say for the growth companies, PETTM is high, but then PE forward is low. So that can happen. So two major things can affect. One is major market movements, and second is earning growth. Next, is it viable if I only make market decisions based on PE ratio? No. You must understand why are you buying the stock. You're not just buying the stock because PE is low, or PE ratio was low 2 months back and now it is within the range you were looking for, or something has changed in the stock. You always have to understand the impact of the PE. At the same time, you have to understand what is the value, what is the growth, why are you buying the stock, are you going to hold the stock, or what is the direction you're going to follow. So you have to understand the other aspects of the purchase when you consider PE ratio as well. Now, how do I buy the stock? I'll give you an example here. Let's say I want to buy, for example, Micron Technology. Stock ticker is MU. The current PE or PETTM is, let's say, 40. Okay. Now, that means this is bit higher, on the bit higher range. Okay. So what I will do, I'll also check MU PE which is a forward ratio, which is, let's say, 20. Okay, which is a good range. Now when I look at the stock's PE ratio, I'll also check other things like balance sheet and what are the other ratios, and what is the company's growth and what the company is doing, how the earnings are going to increase or decrease in the upcoming year, what are the other competitors or other businesses directly competing this company, right? So let's talk about the PE here. Now if it is 40, definitely I'm not going to buy because it's a bit on the expensive side. Now I'm going to wait for this PE ratio to come down, right? But I'm not going to wait too long. If I wait for this stock to go 10%, 20% down, then maybe this PE ratio will come down to 30 or 25. So that's a good range. I'm going to follow that range. So if the stock falls 10% or 20%, so it is going to fall if the earnings do not come well, or if the stock market itself is going into the correction mode, or something happens, even a small kind of news, let's say something happens, or somebody says something, and or maybe the company CEO says something, and which doesn't have the direct impact, but then stock will fall. So at that point I'll analyze that the news itself, what is the impact of the news. If the news is, let's say, related to something which doesn't really even affect the business, for example, the news is war between some of the Middle East countries or something like that, so that doesn't really affect the Micron Technology business. So but still the stock market is going down, and so the MU stock is going down. So what I'll do, I'll check the ratio here and my other equations as well, and I'll get into this stock. So at this moment for me it's a good value stock to buy. Okay, so this is just one example. This is how I evaluate a company, but then that doesn't mean that I just look at the PE stock. I'm just saying that again because make something a chart or something where you want to analyze different aspects or of the stock before you buy that. Next is, what other ratios should I focus on or should I consider before buying a stock? So other known ratios or famous ratios are price to sales, price to earning to growth, or price to book value. There are a few more ratios as well, but these are the basic ratios you should consider before you buy any stock. So this was about it, guys. PE ratio. If you have any further questions, leave me the comments below, and I'll try to discuss those questions in the upcoming videos. Thank you for watching.